It's supposed to be the grandest Russian military spectacle of them all, a showcase of immense power that is both the envy and the terror of the entire world. But it has been reduced to nothing. No weapons, weak begging for ceasefires. Putin's victory parade is going to be little more than a piddling, self-aggrandizing march. A humiliation for the strong man who is scared that Ukraine will rain fire down on his parade. Putin just told on himself. Russia is losing the Ukraine war, and we got a major hint that Putin feels the same when Moscow made a declaration on April 29th. Putin chose that day to have one of his aides, Yuri Ushakov, announce that there will be a ceasefire on May 9th. Why a ceasefire? Russia wants to hold its annual Victory Day parade. What is supposed to be a commemoration of Russia overcoming the Nazis during World War II has been morphed into a grotesque attempt at power projection by Putin in recent years. Russia's leader wants to keep up the masquerade. He wants a ceasefire to ensure that nothing can happen to his little saber-rattling event. And he has even gone through US President Donald Trump to try to make it happen. Pravda revealed that Putin spoke to Trump in a 1.5-hour phone call that saw Russia's president whine about Ukrainian attacks on Russian territory. Putin then said he wanted a ceasefire for his parade in a transparent attempt to make the US think that he is looking for a halt to hostilities because he wants to bring an end to the war. That's not what Putin wants. He's scared of Ukraine. He's terrified that Ukraine will send missiles to strike his parade, so he's trying to leverage his way into getting a ceasefire any way he can. There are plenty of reasons why Putin needs the war to stop. Before we dig into them, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky sees right through Putin's attempts to manipulate and cajole. This is nothing but rank desperation from Russia's leader as he tries to preserve an event that he uses to prop up his strongman image. They want the parade to pass calmly for a few hours, then resume attacks afterwards. We don't want any ceasefire to become a tactical deception by the Russian Federation, Zelensky said after news broke of Putin's demands. Russia, for its part, claims that it doesn't need any agreement from Ukraine to implement its ceasefire. Putin's favorite mouthpiece, Dmitry Peskov, said as much on April 30th, stating, "This is a decision of the head of the Russian state, and it will be implemented. But of course, everyone would expect the same kind of reaction from the Kyiv regime in the form of appropriate intentions. So far, there has been none." Typical gamesmanship from Russia, masking humiliation with claims that Ukraine is in the wrong. All of this is being done not because Putin genuinely wants a ceasefire. Putin is scared. He knows that Ukraine has the ability to strike Moscow, and it could use that ability during his Victory Day parade. On top of that, Russia has more sinister reasons for declaring its ceasefire for this parade. But for now, those of you with long memories may already be thinking back to 2025. Ahead of last year's Victory Day parade, Putin made similar declarations about a ceasefire, as he again sought desperately to protect his precious parade from attack. There are echoes of 2025 in Putin's 2026 demands, but this year something is different about Victory Day. Back in 2025, Putin indeed put on as grand a spectacle as he possibly could, even as Russia's military was being ravaged in Ukraine. The 80th anniversary of the Victory Day parade saw Putin invite dignitaries from around the world. Those who were willing to share a stage with Russia include China's President Xi Jinping, who was the headline figure among 27 world leaders who Russia said were joining it for the event. Such an important anniversary also saw Russia pull out all the stops it could to make the parade memorable. Russia managed to showcase about 150 military vehicles in 2025, including tanks. That was surprising. Tanks hadn't been present in the 2 previous years of the parade because they were too busy being blown to pieces in Ukraine. But Putin managed to use tanks that he was too scared to send into Ukraine in the 2025 parade, along with 11,000 soldiers who were probably happy to have a day's reprieve before they were inevitably sent to die in Ukrainian kill zones. Victory Day 2025 was far from the most impressive showcase of Russia's military might, but the presence of world leaders, soldiers, and some equipment at least created the illusion that Russia had some strength and clout on the global stage. Then we get to the 2026 parade, and everything has changed. Putin is still begging for a ceasefire just as he did in 2025, only this time, Russia's leader doesn't have a cast of dignitaries by his side that he can use as a shield against a Ukrainian attack. Part of the reason why Xi and his ilk were in Russia for Victory Day 2025 was that Putin knew Ukraine wouldn't risk an attack that could lead to the sparking of a conflict with another country. But in 2026, there will likely be no major world leaders. Putin is on his own. And to make matters even worse for Russia's president, the ceasefire that he has proposed isn't protecting a relatively large parade like the one we saw in 2025. It's protecting practically nothing. Russia is barely going to have anything to showcase for Victory Day 2026. Reuters reports that Victory Day 2026 will include absolutely no Russian weapons on the roads. We're not going to see tanks and armored cars rolling through the streets of Moscow. There will be no artillery units or air defense systems on proud display. Not even the intercontinental ballistic missiles that Russia has showcased in previous years will be making an appearance. The National Interest notes that Russia is also going to send no cadets from its military schools or similar institutions to march in the parade, and it still isn't clear how many actual Russian military personnel are going to be taking part. The only thing that anybody believes will happen is that a handful of Russian fighter jets will conduct a flyover. This is meant to be a showcase of Russia's military might, and Putin isn't going to be displaying anything that Russia has made. There are no two ways around it. This is a humiliation for Putin on multiple levels. First, he's had to beg for a ceasefire, going so far as to speak to Trump in a desperate attempt to convince the US to apply pressure on Ukraine not to attack his pathetic parade. Second, think about what the Victory Day parade is supposed to signify in Russia. This is the single most important event in the Russian military calendar, a day to celebrate an era where Russia fought against an actual scourge and came out on top. Yes, Putin has twisted the parade to suit his purposes for years. It's become as much of a saber-rattling event as anything else, but it still has symbolic importance and it's meant to be a spectacle. Now what is it? A couple of jets flying over and a handful of soldiers mournfully marching as Putin, or one of his body doubles, watches on in silence. This is not the powerful Russia that Putin wants to present. It's an admission of failure, a signal from Putin that his long and painful invasion of Ukraine has cost Russia so much that it simply can't afford to put on the kind of parade that is supposed to happen for Victory Day. What we're seeing here is big. Victory Day 2026 will be the first time in almost 2 decades that no military equipment goes rumbling through Moscow's Red Square. 18 years ago, that was normal. The parade was about celebrating victory over the Nazis, not saber-rattling. It's only since 2008 that Putin has ordered military equipment to be on display. Now, 18 years later, the equipment has been pulled. And there are plenty of reasons why, but before we dig deeper into what they are, with each further showcasing Putin's humiliation, this is a quick reminder that you're watching The Military Show. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time to hit the button so you never miss our analysis of the Ukraine war. So, Putin's pathetic parade. Why has it been reduced to the utter nothingness that Russia is going to try to showcase on May 9th? Putin's mouthpieces have been trying to explain it all away. Russia's defense ministry has already claimed that the current operational situation is the reason why Russian military equipment won't be on display during Victory Day 2026. That roughly translates to, our equipment is getting slaughtered in Ukraine and we have nothing left to show off. However, Peskov has also put in another appearance, and he has concocted an excuse so brazen that it beggars belief. The Kyiv regime, which is losing ground on the battlefield every day, has now launched full-scale terrorist activity, and therefore, all measures are being taken to minimize the danger. Peskov told reporters when quizzed about the parade. Really, Peskov? Are you going down the road of supposed terrorism with your excuses? Ukraine isn't the country that has been purposefully targeting civilians over a 4+ year campaign. That's been Russia's strategy since the beginning of Putin's invasion. According to the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, 15,578 Ukrainian civilians have been killed during Russia's invasion up to March 31st. That amounts to roughly 3,800 civilians per year that Russia is eliminating with its constant attacks. Another 43,352 Ukrainian civilians have been injured during the same period, which works out to be about 10,800 per year. And yet Putin, through his favorite mouthpiece, is trying to claim that it's Ukraine that is pulling off terrorist attacks. The reality is that it's Russia that has been terrorizing Ukraine for 4 years. That terrorization has been escalating in recent weeks. On March 24th, the Atlantic Council reported that Russia has purposefully bombed a UNESCO World Heritage Site in Lviv, which is as far west as any major Ukrainian city gets. Lviv isn't on the front lines, it's not even close. Yet Russia has targeted one of its most important sites for the sole reason of spreading the kind of terror that Peskov claims that Ukraine is looking to inflict on Russia during Victory Day. Russia's lies are transparent. The hypocrisy is rank. What we see here with Peskov's comments is a weak attempt to insinuate that Ukraine would attack the Victory Day parade to kill civilians, and not to take out Russian military equipment. That claim is being made with a sinister purpose. Russia is trying to engineer something here, and will reveal what that is soon. But even false claims that Ukraine is going to attack Russian civilians tells us more than Putin would want. Hidden behind Peskov's words is an admission that Putin doesn't want to put out into the world. Ukraine can hit Moscow, and there's nothing that Russia can do about it. After 4 years of fighting, Ukraine's defense industry has stepped up and produced weapons that offer the perfect combination of distance and firepower to wreak havoc on the military equipment that Putin would normally have trundling down Moscow's streets for the Victory Day parade. Firepoint's FP5 Flamingo and the more recent FP9 are both perfect examples. The FP9 is closer to the end of its testing phase every day and it looks lethal. Larger than Russia's Iskander ballistic missiles, the FP9 is a homegrown ballistic missile that has a range of 855 kilometers, or about 530 miles, and a warhead that packs an 800-kilogram or 1,760-pound explosive punch. Could Russia be worried that Ukraine will use Victory Day 2026 to debut this deadly new weapon? Perhaps. But even if Ukraine doesn't have the FP9 ready for May 9th, it does have the Flamingo. A drone-missile hybrid, the Flamingo can fly up to 3,000 kilometers, or a little over 1,860 miles, and has a 1,100-kilogram or 2,425-pound warhead. It's not as fast as the FP9 as it isn't a ballistic missile, but it is being mass-produced, can travel far enough to hit Moscow, and has been used to hit targets already, such as an Iskander missile production facility in the Russian city of Votkinsk. So Ukraine can hit Moscow during Victory Day 2026 if it wants. However, the removal of military equipment from that parade and Peskov's comments about Ukraine planning an attack tell us something else. It's not just that Ukraine can strike Moscow, it's that Russia clearly doesn't feel confident enough in its air defenses to stop such a strike. Russia has S-300 and S-400 air defense systems all over Moscow to guard the country's most important city. Those systems are especially prevalent wherever Putin happens to be, so you'd have to imagine they'll be stationed close to every street that the Victory Day 2026 parade will roll through, and yet Russia has pulled military equipment from that parade. This is Putin's confession. Ukraine can hit Moscow, and Russia isn't sure it can protect its parade. The developing Ukrainian long-range capabilities are a massive problem, and they would be enough to cause what we're seeing in Putin's parade. But behind that problem is another major issue that also reveals just how badly the Ukraine war is going for Russia. It's not just that Russia wants to protect its equipment. Victory Day 2026 won't feature military equipment because Russia simply can't spare anything for its grand spectacle. Former speechwriter for Putin and now one of many former Kremlin allies that have been labeled as foreign agents, Abbas Galyamov has been among the most critical of Putin's decision. Are they afraid of a mutiny, or has all the equipment burned up in Ukraine? Galyamov asked. Indeed, battlefield pressures are mounting on Russia, as it has burned through billions upon billions of its military stockpiles during its failing invasion. According to Ukraine, Russia has lost almost 12,000 tanks, around 24,000 armored vehicles, over 41,000 artillery systems, and many more thousands of pieces of equipment, including missiles, air defenses, ships, and aircraft. The total cost of all of this lost equipment stands somewhere around $142.3 billion, Ukraine says. All of this equipment has to be replaced. The tanks and missiles that are supposed to roll through Moscow on May 9th can't do it because they're too busy being sent to Ukraine. What we see here in what essentially amounts to a cancellation of the most important aspects of the Victory Day parade is yet another admission from Russia. It's not just scared that Ukraine is going to strike. Russia has been humiliated through the loss of so much of its equipment that it can't afford to make any of it vulnerable. Remember, parades don't just pop up out of thin air, they have to be prepared and staged. Whatever scant equipment that could have made its way to Moscow has to be gathered up beforehand, making it a prime target for Ukraine's drones and its new generation of ballistic missiles. Columns have to park up and rehearse. Simply attempting something like that would showcase how weakened Russia's military has become on the equipment front. And if Ukraine managed to hit a rehearsal, Victory Day would be cancelled by Ukraine's hand. Putin is just trying to get ahead of that issue. He's weakly grasping at whatever small amount of control he still has over the Victory Day situation. But let's assume for a moment that Russia had something to show off. It still might have avoided sending equipment onto Moscow's roads because the Victory Day parade is a lavish spectacle under Putin. The parade has been twisted into a day-long celebration of Putin and all his power, and such displays cost money. Russia isn't exactly doing well on the financial front. Over 4 years of war in Ukraine have tanked the Russian economy. The country's gross domestic product, or GDP, for the first quarter of 2026 fell 0.3% year-on-year on the back of a 2025 that had already seen stagnation. Industrial output is declining too, as Putin's military-first economic policy is crippling every non-war-related industry in Russia. Food prices are rising out of control, and the Russian people are dealing with a cost of living crisis that can be traced directly back to what the invasion of Ukraine has cost Russia. Putin can't afford a lavish parade right now, neither literally nor figuratively. If he splashes the cash on Victory Day, he's going to have a whole lot of people asking why they can't even afford the staples they need to survive. Begging for a ceasefire isn't going to stop the humiliation that's coming. Even if the victory parade goes off without a hitch, it will be a sad display of nothingness compared to what Putin has put on in the past. But here's where a more sinister factor might come into play that could catch everybody off guard. Russia may be hoping for something that is beyond the pale, and we see that in Peskov's comments about Ukraine supposedly terrorizing Russia. Think about this. There will be no military equipment in Moscow on May 9th, but what will be in the city are thousands of civilians who feel they have to line the streets to massage Putin's massive ego, even as he fails to put on the kind of parade that would make his people feel as though their country is strong. Russia knows it will have the people, even if it doesn't have the strength, and it may just be hoping that Ukraine will launch a strike that could kill civilians on Victory Day. Russia might be laying a trap for Ukraine in the hope that it will launch missiles or drones at Moscow on May 9th. If that happens and civilians are injured, Putin would then be able to point to supposed evidence that it is Ukraine that is the aggressor nation. He would use this incident as leverage as he attempts to pressure Ukraine into giving Russia what it wants in peace negotiations, and he would try to use the incident to manipulate other countries, particularly the US, into taking his side. Russia may be laying out some bait, but we're willing to bet that Ukraine won't take a bite. With no military assets to strike, Ukraine will likely leave the Victory Day parade alone to be the sad monument to Putin's incompetence that it's shaping up to be. And why would Ukraine attack a target that has no military value? It's too busy shredding through Russian equipment elsewhere. You've already seen how much of Russia's equipment has gone up in flames in the war against Ukraine. More recently, the General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces announced that Ukraine has destroyed 1,300 of Russia's ground robotic systems up to the beginning of May. On May 2nd alone, Russia lost 76 artillery systems, 283 vehicles and fuel tankers, 2,200 drones, and 12 ground robots inside Ukraine. And on May 1st, news broke that Ukraine had pulled off a drone strike against Russia's Shargol airfield that damaged 4 aircraft, including Su-57 and Su-34 fighter jets. As far as Ukraine is concerned, Putin can have his embarrassingly small Victory Day parade. While Russia's president tries to maintain what has become a monument to his own ego, Ukraine will just carry on destroying Russia's equipment anyway. It'll just do it in Ukraine and elsewhere in Russia, rather than on the streets of Moscow on May 9th. And if it really wants to create some Victory Day havoc, Ukraine could unleash a genius new weapon that doesn't kill, but will bring chaos to Putin's parade. It's a weapon that is shockingly simple, already in use in the occupied territories, and has the potential to plunge Moscow back to the Stone Age. Find out what it is and why it's so important for Ukraine by watching our video. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to The Military Show so you don't miss what we have coming next. And thank you, as always, for watching.